And welcome back, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Fatso Radio, episode number 45. Very special episode today. I have special guests today, Lisa and Rick Waechter, and Zenato as well, of course, from Double D Farms in Singhampton, Ontario. Welcome, guys, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Carlo.
Hey.
Yeah. So Zenato's actually going to start off our show with giving kind of his impact or his kind of version on what he wants to say as well from a perspective of someone his age. Zenato is 9 years old, and I'll let you take it away, sir.
What do you want to say to people about eating meat fat versus eating vegetables and stuff like that?
Well, at first there's not much of a difference, I think, but within at least a month,
Can you
there's
tell
a lot
Mr.
of a
Carlo?
difference.
Yeah, you have to tell them.
Yeah. So what you're saying basically is that you felt differently when you switched kind of eating different foods then?
I haven't
He was raised on meat.
Yeah, and he can tell the difference right now between our meat and meat in any other store or anything like that. If somebody makes meatballs, you don't do it with our meat.
Yeah.
He tells them.
You can tell. That's awesome. So you have a good tongue then. You have a good taste for good meat. Good. So what do you think?
And then what did you bring to your school for
tacos?
Taco meat made with?
Our meat.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
What kind of meat do we raise here?
Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about your meat, Zenato?
Sheep, cows, specifically Dexter's, right, pigs, and we used to have chickens.
Okay.
And we had that.
And what's your favorite kind of meat to use for tacos?
Taco meat.
Taco meat. Beef? Ground beef. Good. Awesome. Well, I'll ask you. So, do you have a hard time eating healthy, Zenato? As a kid, I remember I was a kid. I used to want to eat candy and want to eat junk food. Do you have a hard time with that?
No, if it's tacos.
And burgers. You like your burgers.
And you eat lamb
and meatballs.
Yeah.
Nice.
But anything else, it's a little hard to get me to eat it.
Well, you stopped asking for candies in your lunch. You don't want candies in your lunch anymore.
That's great. Well, my daughter's 8 years
He
old.
likes high-fat ice creams.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah, real thick, creamy dairy.
That is really good.
I'm learning how to box.
There you go. That's amazing. Well, you're a healthy kid, a healthy-looking kid, that's for sure. So do you help work on the farm?
Very rarely.
No. What happens every March?
I help with lambing.
He is a big part of lambing.
Yeah, we got videos of him having to bottle feed lambs that we've had to rescue.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago when we had a rescue lamb, Donato had to clean the cage in the house every day. He had to feed it twice a day.
Walk it around.
He had to run around the room and the lamb would chase him so that it would get some exercise.
Well, that's awesome.
Doing that, and this year his class got to do a vote to name one of the lambs.
Oh.
And what did they name it?
My best friend Anton chose the name Gibbles. It got the most votes.
Donato, when we get guests come to the farm like other kids, Donato will take them out and show them the animals, especially the sheep. When Nika, Logan, and I believe your other brother's kids were here.
Okay.
Donato took them out to the field to see all the sheep.
Yep, they did. Well, and he'll do tours at the cattle and stuff like that too when people come out for that. And he's had his cub pack come out a couple times when we've taken everybody fishing and done bonfires with them.
Sorry. Can you tell him who's not here right now? Who's your brother?
Dominic.
Yeah, Dominic's very, very a little shy, a little hard to get on the camera. So
okay.
He wants to read right now. Bye-bye.
Can you say bye-bye?
Bye.
All right. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for sharing. All right. That's awesome. That's awesome. And thank you so much for having him on. I know, like I said, my daughter, she's a real advocate for kind of healthy eating and really for healthy meat as well. So I definitely want to get into that.
Well, he actually wanted to start a letter writing campaign about a year or two ago to A&W because they promote that their chicken is vegetable grain fed. And he said, but chickens are omnivores.
Yeah.
Why would you want to make your chicken sick and then feed it to people? So it was kind of, I'm pretty sure he was about 7 years old at the time, and he wanted to start a letter writing campaign to let them know that their chickens weren't healthy if they were only feeding them grain.
Yeah.
So, he's definitely an advocate. He was just a little bit playing to the camera now.
No, that's fine. I welcome that. And honestly, like you said, it's great that the younger generation, right? I mean, they see us, right, and they hear us, and it's amazing because they're gonna take the torch from us. So.
Well, he actually gets very upset when he learns about some of his classmates that are starting to go vegan and things like that, because he worries about their health already, and he doesn't quite know how to address it with other kids in his class, because into anything he tells them about meat versus vegetable, in terms of, you get more nutrition from meat than you do from vegetables. They're more nutrient dense and things like that, and that you can raise it in such a way that you're regenerating the earth. And they get very, because they're like, well, no, my parents say this, and unfortunately he's not prepared to do battle with their parents, right?
Exactly. And that's the problem I run into as well. I mean, we can get into it, but that's the problem I hear, is that, a parent may say, well, I'm going to be vegan. And I'm not saying that my kid's going to be. Well, what do you think? It's not going to bleed over to your kid? You're not going to, children are not going to see what you do. I mean, if we're setting examples as parents, we want them to see what we do, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
But.
One of the things that I really have a problem with, I shouldn't say a problem with it. Well, it's the way I don't like things unfolding. If someone wants to be a vegan for whatever reason they choose, so be it. But don't interfere with other people's right to eat meat, or be omnivores, carnivores, etc. And then the misinformation, Lisa and I, we've always been kind of grounded in facts. I mean, I was a soldier, martial artist, now I'm a farmer. She works in tech, and she's a martial artist and an athlete. And we come from backgrounds that are just very fact-oriented, because if you're not operating out of facts, you're going to fail in those fields. Yeah. And so when we deal with misinformation, it's disturbing. And there's a lot of things, if we have time to get to, we can certainly pull apart some myths that go around.
Absolutely. I definitely want to get into that. So just before we get into that, actually reminds me, let's talk a little bit about your farm itself, what you guys have as far as your operation, maybe even how you got into it as well. And then we can, like I said, take those hot topics, because I really want to unwrap it, because it's important for me to stand on the mountaintop and yell it. I'm sure it's important for you guys too. It's your livelihood, right? So so let's kind of get into maybe the farm and what brought you there as well.
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
All right. So it was kind of a twofold thing. Two things kind of happened at once. One was Rick was looking towards gearing down his time with the military and trying to figure out where we were going to go from there. And my hands are moving the camera again. Sorry. And then the other thing that happened around the same time was our oldest son was diagnosed with autism. And so we started looking at helping mitigate some of the effects of the autism through diet. And we discovered that paleo was a good start towards that. But it wasn't just paleo, it was also eating the grass-fed, grass-finished meat. Because your fatty acids and things like that have a much better profile in a healthy grass-fed animal. You do have to differentiate between a healthy grass-fed animal and a very poor grass-fed animal.
Yeah.
So we were kind of dealing with that, and at that time, you really didn't have a lot of options for where you were going to get grass-fed, grass-finished. We happened to be lucky that there was a farm not far from here, and they had what was called Beyond Organic. And I remember the first time seeing that label and thinking in my head, what do you mean Beyond Organic? It can't be Beyond Organic. And then when we were starting to look into this more, and a gentleman gave us a book called You Can Farm and Be Successful by Joel Salatin,
Yeah.
that totally kind of changed the way we were looking at farming. And so when we went back to this farm and asked them, like, what is beyond organic? They said, well, with organic certifications, you can still do things that are not natural for the animal. So you can feed organic corn to a
and you
cow.
can confine the animal too.
And that's considered organic, but it's not natural. So this beyond organic label that they have, you have to prove that you are basically doing things that would be natural for the animal as well.
Okay.
So we started spending some time, and at that point we were kind of thinking, well, since it's so hard to find this meat, why don't we start raising it? And so we kind of started learning more from the Joel Salatin book about how to start out small and build up your farm, renting land from other people. And he first introduced us to this idea of the tiered farming and things like that. So our quest to find something for him to do after the military and a way to help for us to do after the military, and for our eldest to work within his autism issues, it kind of all came together with, we're going to be farmers.
Wow.
And initially a lot of people were laughing at us. You're not farmers. You only have 5 cows, and they're Dexters, so they're small. And then it was, oh, you're not farmers. You only have 8 cows and 30 chickens. And it was, oh, you're not farmers. You only have, 12 cows and 60 chickens and 3 goats and 4 sheep. And now it's like, oh, you guys are farming. Yes, yep. Well, we said we were farmers, and we just kept doing it. And
one thing that's been a real compliment, you get the old fuddy-duddy farmers who've grown up with cattle and sheep and pigs. And
I'm telling you can't finish them on anything but corn.
They come to our farm, and they're like, oh, wow, your pastures look amazing. Must be the soil. Oh, look at those cows. They're beautiful. Oh, it's just the cows you got. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. It's management.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the best tools in the world and absolutely mess up the job completely.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things we see is a lot of homesteaders that, I'm doing my grass-fed, grass-finished cow. Yeah, you starved your cow. That's why you're not getting a whole lot of meat. It does taste different from the factory stuff. You're right, but
it tastes worse.
But you've got no fat on it, so there's no healthy fat running through it. The flavor is gone, but you've got a grass-fed, grass-finished animal.
Yeah, if that's the only qualifier, then that's what you get, right? I guess.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we have discovered because of the way we do things, and we'll explain a little bit more later, is the flavor of grass-finished meat, and this is explained really well in a book called Steak by Mark Schatzker, who's from Ottawa?
No, Toronto.
Toronto, okay.
Oh, okay.
And in his book, he talks about flavor profiles from different grasses and stuff like that, and we were okay, that, kind of makes sense, I guess. And it wasn't until we started finishing our animals, if we finish in early spring, the flavor profile is one way.
Yeah.
If we finish midsummer, the flavor profile is another way. And then if we finish in late summer, early fall, that's our favorite. That's our favorite flavor profile right there. And
well, that's the beef we got set aside for Carlo there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
When you think of the barbecue, you're gonna think that we injected butter into the fat of the steaks.
So people, they're always bugging us now because we have so many people asking for our meat, but we can't keep up with the demand.
Yeah.
They're like, why are you still only selling it seasonally? Why are you, cutting off at the end of the season? It's like, because you don't want grass-finished beef that's finished on hay. The flavor profile, yes, it's still grass. It's just dried grass. But the flavor profile is so completely different than the ones that finish on the early spring grasses. I mean, up here, it's cool season grasses most of the year. Okay. But there's more clover and alfalfa in the ones that finish. You got to correct me on that one because you're the grass guy.
Okay.
In the fall, it's...
Like Ontario... most of Ontario is a very moist, very cool environment. It creates what we call the C3 cool season grasses, which in a C3 just means how they photosynthesize.
Okay.
To sum it up, what they do is they do their best growing late spring and early fall. And then some of those grasses will go dormant in the summertime.
Because it's too hot.
Yeah, and then some of them will keep growing, like orchard grass will keep growing. Creeping red fescue, which some farmers tell me, that's a lawn grass, and they're right, but you'd be surprised. Sheep and cattle will eat it when it's well managed.
Wow.
We look at the other main food source for cattle on pastures. You're looking at legumes. Legumes is the beans and peas family. So on the annual side, you've got your peas, you've got all your beans, you got your soy on the and then on the hairy vetch. Hairy vetch is annual. On the perennial side, you've got your clover, alfalfa. And the clover family is huge. Sweet clovers, bird's foot trefoil. And the biggest thing you'll find with the whole legume family is they all produce little tiny or large sort of roundish or kidney-shaped seeds. And that's how you tell them. Now, there's certain things we don't monkey with. Like we'll never put soy on this farm. Okay, that's just something that doesn't. That's a warm season legume. It belongs way the heck down in southern U.S. and it's been so monkeyed with that we just don't trust it. Sometimes, actually, we'll cover more in the Ford later on because I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're still talking about a farm, aren't we?
Yeah. So one of the things that we learned is this concept of tiered farming, where once you run one animal through an area, you then move another animal through it. And unfortunately, thanks to the weasels and the minks, we aren't able to do that the same way we used to, because in one night they took out 31 out of 32 chickens we had.
Wow.
And then we got a whole new flock the following spring. We got 24 chickens, and 4 days later they took out all 24 in one night.
Wow. And
then we waited a whole other year and we put them inside of a storage unit in the middle of a big long building. So there's a shed on this side and an apartment on this side and this little teeny tiny storage unit between the two. And it took it a week, but it found a way in through the roof, down through the vapor barrier, because there was no drywall, and took out 24 chickens in one night again. So
what you're saying is nature is cruel.
That's a part of one of our themes we'll talk about.
Yeah.
We talk about with life comes death.
Yeah.
In nature, and we've seen this many examples on our farm, that life and death, they go hand in hand in part of any functioning ecosystem. Perfect example, I moved the cattle, because we move the cows every day, sometimes twice a day. And there was one day I went out to move the cows, and there was this beautiful 3-foot garter snake dead. It had been trampled in half by a cow.
Yeah.
It's not that the cow was out there intending to kill it. It's just wrong time, wrong place.
And how many times when you're walking through the pasture, he sends me pictures of garter snakes with frogs in their mouths. Because,
this is nature.
That's what happens.
Everything you can eat, right?
Also, when we're moving when we are moving the cows, sometimes, unfortunately, there goes some birds' nests and things like that. But, one thing we have noticed since we've been, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but since we've been managing our farm the way we do, there's been a lot of bird life returning. So I actually had to join the Audubon Society so that I can start taking pictures of these birds and go, what is this? Because I've never seen it before.
Yep.
So the second year we were here, we saw a huge influx in our east pasture of red-winged blackbirds. And then last year we saw a brown-headed cowbird, and then the bobolink, which is on the endangered or special.
Well, it's a field bird. And because all the cash croppers typically destroy their fields and stuff, and the hay guys will take it 2 or 3 times, there's not much of a habitat for it.
Yeah. So this year we saw in 2 of our fields, just an explosion of bobolinks in the spring. It was amazing to see, because they have a beautiful call and they're so pretty when they're flying. And then this year I saw my first ever Baltimore Oriole up close.
Wow.
It was this bright orange, and it was zipping around. It knew I was trying to take a picture of it.
No, we're actually getting ahead of ourselves. So we're going to be talking about the model of how the farm works. We'll get to that, because the birds play into that. And it's the birds are a symptom that you're on the right track.
Okay.
So, have we pretty much got you the background of how we got where we are?
Good. Basically where you are, but then basically if you can maybe just explain a little bit of your farm now. So what do you have as far as like you have
and what we do?
cattle and exactly.
Okay. All right. So on our farm right now, we're sitting at 31 head of Dexter cattle. Primary market is direct market to customers of beef sales. And secondary market for the Dexters is breeding stock, because we do have registered stock. We produce some beautiful bulls. If you need a bull, let us know.
Okay. I will.
We also do a sheep flock as well. We keep some pygmy goats in with them. The pygmy goats are not breeding right now, but the sheep flock we breed. We're very proud of all of our ruminant animals, because we have selected carefully. We've culled out the weak ones for food, and we've kept the strongest ones, and we have produced a very strong, vibrant ruminant community, which is the base for our farm. We use a holistically planned regenerative grazing management practices.
Okay.
You can't call it a system. That's one of Alan Savory's pet peeves. I think we were talking about Alan Savory, right?
Sure, yeah.
And basically, with our system of movement with the cattle, or not supposed to say system, our planned grazing, we look at the growth of the plants at any one particular part of the year, and how tight or how much open space we give the cattle will depend on how thick and heavy the grass is growing. We try to plan other things in a certain way too, like the meat stock animals, the ones going off for meat, are now kept in a separate herd. They stay in the front half of the farm, and that's so that their system or their rotations bring them back to the loading pen on the days that we have to ship them off the abattoir. One of the realities of what we do, you have to book months in advance at the local abattoir. That's just the way this business is going. And so you've got to plan everything you're doing to have your animals finished by then, ready to go, and then get them loaded and then carry on with getting them back out on the grass. Wow. We also try as much as possible to get our cows. We like to see our cows out for about 30 some odd days plus on fresh green grass in the spring before they start calving. Last year that didn't happen. We got a young bull in the fall of 2018. And when you looked at this guy, he was only 16 months. You know, it'd be like a 15-year-old hitting on some 30-year-old women at the bar. Like we didn't think he had a chance for a while. Well, I tell you, he was a little bit more charming than we thought, because I think it was June 3rd. I called Lisa up one morning, and they'd only been out for about 3 weeks. And I said, I need your help out here. The first calf's already come. And we never had calves come that quickly. And it was just boom, one after the other. And by the time July rolls around, we were pretty much done.
Yeah, normally we have one, maybe two before July 1st.
Wow.
And this year we had, when did Ganymede come? He came on my break, didn't he?
Just before. He came on at the end of your break.
Yeah, so
just before Canada.
Yeah, so we had 7 out of 8 calves born before the end of June this year.
Wow.
So we only had 1 born in July this year. And that was a big change for us.
I guess
it was good in a way, because that extra month of living off milk and living off grass gives them 1 more month to put on fat. Ooh, there's that sacred word again. So
before they go into winter.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little bit about both our sheep and our cattle stock.
And how we select them.
Yep, how we select. We use a rare breed of cattle, the Dexter, smallest breed out there. You saw from the pictures there, Carlo, they got pretty big, impressive horns on them.
Yeah.
They're never really picked up by the mainstream beef industry because of their small size. They're a very primitive, almost a wild breed. Their background story, from what we understand, is 400 some odd years ago. The Spanish landed in Ireland, and they brought their mountain cattle with them from Spain. And then sometime later, when they left behind all these cattle.
And they just turned them loose.
Yeah, as the years went by, and the English, kind of a little on the oppressive side with the Irish, they would take the good farmland and take the Irish peasants and go to the swamps and mountains, and good luck, take your puny cattle with you. That resulted in a cattle that can survive. And a Dexter cow, the only thing that even comes close to it in the cattle world would be the Dexter and the Highland, are probably the two hardiest peasants' cattle, if you will. You could put them on weeds and tree leaves and they'll survive. Okay. So they're very tough, very hardy cattle, strong immune systems. We've never had to intervene with a birth. Okay, when you look at the mainstream beef cattle industry in Canada, there's a lot of times where they have to pull a calf. That's just not pleasant. We've had to do that sometimes with sheep.
Yeah, so all of our births, they just do them out in the pasture without us around. There's no need for us to be there to do anything. The closest we ever had to come to intervening was when Dionysus was born.
Yeah, it was a young heifer.
It was her first baby,
and she had a monster.
He was huge, and she was our smallest mom ever.
Yeah.
And it was the first calf born on this farm. We had our new puppy. Disney was with Rick, and I was at work, and he's sending me texts because it's like 2:00 in the afternoon, and the coyotes are howling because they can hear her.
Yeah.
They know, they can smell it. And so the dog was like on alert. And so Rick was standing like just on the outside of the paddock with like a big stick in his hand. And Athena's brother was a year younger than her, Blink. He went and stood over her, and he was snorting and pawing the ground.
He was a steer at that point, but he had been a bull for the first year and a half of his life.
Yeah, and he could hear the coyote. He was like shaking his head. And
we'll talk about coyotes for a bit.
Okay, and before we get that, let me clarify. So a bull would be before being castrated?
Yes.
And a steer is after?
Steer is after castration. A bull is before.
Every man out there wants to know.
Yeah, a heifer is a female who hasn't had a baby yet.
Okay.
And then once she's had a baby, she's a cow. There are different, some people say they're still a heifer after their first
one. The Texas standard is that you have to have 2 calves for some reason before you have a cow.
But we just go with, after you have a calf, you're a cow.
You're giving milk.
They get the respect for sure, yeah.
Sorry?
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Another thing we discovered about the Dexters, when we moved to this farm, and it only had a couple horses on it, and it had been in cash crop and haying for a long time. But yeah, it was in terrible shape. The coyotes hung around a lot. When we first brought our herd in, the coyotes were coming around a lot and hassling them. The difference is that Dexters they are not afraid.
And they're organized.
Yeah, so like you see the muskox when they line up when the wolves come after them. That's what our Dexters did. They just all lined up at the edge of the electric fence.
Shield, yeah.
They pawed the ground. They put their horns down. They started snorting, and we're looking at them going, you know what? They get out. We ain't stopping them. We ain't got a chance.
I remember the first spring we were here, and we were, again, down in the East Field, and it's a pretty good run from the bottom of that field up to the house. And it was around dusk, and we were doing something with the cattle down there, and we heard the coyotes, and we both looked at each other, and we jumped in with the cows.
Oh my God.
We were like, if anything comes near, I'm getting behind Wonder Woman. Like, because she's got the biggest horns, and she's got the biggest attitude. I shouldn't say she has the biggest attitude. She is the biggest protector.
Wow.
She is the mama who will not take anything, and she will protect everyone else's babies.
Oh, this was 2 years ago in the summer of 2017. The calves were all sleeping in one corner of the paddock. And I couldn't believe in broad daylight this bold coyote was sneaking up. one of the steers was about 50 feet away. He lifted his head. He sounded the alarm, and there was a whole herd of mamas went charging after that coyote.
Wow.
The one cow she's talking about, Wonder Woman, she's the herd mama. So she went and gathered up all the babies in a circle, and she stood guard over them while the rest of the moms went chasing after this coyote.
Well, they ran to the edge of the paddock because they aren't going to chase right through. They ran to the edge of the paddock. And when we say paddock, we mean a little teeny tiny string of poly wire with
8,000 volts.
With a battery charger plugged into it to get just a little bit of a. So if you grab it, you get a good jolt, but it's enough that those cows, they don't want that jolt, they stop. And because it's so thin and lightweight, and our posts, you can put them in the ground, take them out of the ground. So that's how we do our moving every day, is we just build these new paddocks and move the string every day.
Oh, just to finish up the brief. Mr. Coyote took off to the woods. Now when the coyotes come around, they do a big, wide circle around. They don't go anywhere near the cows. So the cows don't have a problem being hassled anymore.
Yeah, and our sheep stay relatively close to the road. So the coyotes.
And the house.
Yeah, so they're kind of between the house and the road. So the coyotes don't really like being that close to the road. So we haven't really had any issues.
Yeah, we have the dogs are the dogs are always out in the front fields. So it's we're how do I put this? Like, part of coexistence with the coyotes is deterrence is more of our thing.
Yeah, we haven't shot or killed any of them or set traps or anything like that. They're, it's the wilds. They come and go, and it's their habitat. We don't want to take away their habitat. We just don't want them to take away our livelihood.
Exactly.
A problem, and a specific coyote just keeps coming back to come after Sarah Lambs. Well, now we got a problem because it's got an easy target, and that we'll deal with.
And I read from with coyotes, if you look for a problem with them, you'll get a problem. As far as if you start removing them, they'll multiply and they go crazy, apparently. I don't know.
Well, and the same thing with the minks and the weasels. Like the gentleman across the road from us has lost his minks or his chickens a few times as well. Wow. And now he's started trapping and shooting and stuff like that. And it seems like the mink and weasel problem is getting worse now.
Yeah. Wow.
But the most interesting thing about that was the couple of years when we didn't even really have the chickens cooped up in any way, but they were living with the sheep. We didn't have any trouble with minks or weasels. But then as soon as we had the chickens living in the closed barn and we had the sheep spending the winter somewhere else, that's when we lost everything. So, the other animals also help as a deterrent too. Yeah. So you don't need to kill the mink weasels if you've just got something else to deter them.
Yeah, exactly. So what would be the easiest way to kind of describe what, how you're different than what people have in mind of a farm, right? Because I think most people, when they hear, especially people that are just willing to shit on meat consumption, or just even from a health perspective, but an ethical perspective, from everything, like, you're obviously not a factory farm. What is a factory farm, if you can maybe share with us? And then, is it as bad as we think it is? And, what's the extent of that? And then, how different are you?
Well, all right, we'll...
I'm going to let you take that one.
Okay. Now, Lisa's going to go give Donato a hand here. We'll talk about feedlots. There's what a feedlot is. It's a concentrated feeding operation. What we have here, for most what you see in Ontario, it's nothing compared to the American nightmares. Okay. We just simply don't have the population to support that large of beef production.
Okay.
And another name for it might be finishing lots. And what happens normally is you get a bunch of farmers raise up their cattle, and they'll have steers, maybe heifers, that they don't want to keep as replacement breeding stock. Usually at about a year to a year and a half. I know from talking to one feedlot producer in this local area, he wants them in at about 700 pounds. And each breed will be different when they get to that weight. Okay, and they'll bring them in. They'll be on a silage diet, okay? Corn silage being probably the main thing. And then what a corn silage diet is they harvest a whole corn plant, and then it's fermented, and then they'll add in maybe some extra grain, molasses, and they'll get a little bit of hay as well, just to keep their stomachs functioning properly. They do get more grain in a feedlot typically, and the period they're in there for is usually until they get to about 1,000, maybe 1,100 pounds. That's what the typical size for the standard kill boxes in the more larger industrial operations. And it's a commodity market, so they want consistency. They want them to be approximately the same size. Now those cattle are what they have like backgrounding or cow-calf operations. What they typically do, they waste a lot of land. Like a farmer might have 100 acres of land. He'll probably set aside about 70 acres for producing hay, because the biggest challenge to any Canadian farmer is getting through the winter with enough feed to get through the spring. Oh. And then they'll have the rest of their farm they'll set aside as a pasture, and they'll do what's known as continuous grazing. And what this is, say you got 25 cattle, okay, or 25 cows with 25 calves, and you got like a 10, 20 acre field. You just put them out in the end of May, and you go find them again in September, and they'll have barn access the whole time. They'll get a little bit of grain supplement, maybe some hay supplement, and there's no management here. Like the cows are just going back and forth, back and forth.
Or at most they'll break it up into a few, and they'll do 3 weeks in this one, 3 weeks in that one, 3 weeks in that one, and then rotate again.
Yeah, the most common one is the continuous grazing. And that, what they should call that really is just deliberate overgrazing. It's what it is. When you drive by a highway and you see in like late June and July, and you see cows like eating what looks like AstroTurf, and there's weeds everywhere, like here, there, and everywhere, that's continuous grazing. It's terrible management. It's hard to describe. It's sort of a lot of farmers think that that's really the only way to do it. Now with what we do, now let's talk about that. We're not the only one. There are a lot of farms in Ontario picking up on this, and there's more and more catching on. We follow what herding ruminants are meant to do. Now, Carlo, are you okay if I take a minute to start talking?
Please.
Paleo science and
please do.
Here?
Please, yes, I'm really into that. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with the ruminant animal. The ruminant animal is a 4-chambered stomach animal, and we are talking sheep, bison, cattle, moose, deer, elk, wildebeest, caribou, all right, yaks.
Antelopes?
Yeah, antelopes. They either have horns or antlers, and they have that particular shape of feet when you look at cattle feet or deer feet, and they have that 4-chambered stomach. And they're called a ruminant, the first stomach. This is the giant sauerkraut fermentation vat, okay? These animals eat plant matter, okay? They live off of leaves, stems, sometimes like bark, seeds that come from the plant, okay? And when these animals are left in their natural environment, they know how much of what they need to eat. And what happens is they're going to chew up all that plant matter, the stuff that humans couldn't even think of eating, okay? It would make us really sick. We'd just barf it up, all right? They put it down in the rumen, okay? And when I work at the abattoir, I cut these things open when I have to dispose of things, and I can see the results. And if you've ever made sauerkraut or anything like that, you get a pickling effect when you have that the lactic acid production, okay? Yep. That's what cattle, when I say all the ruminants do, okay? They're taking this plant matter and they're pickling it into a digestible food source, okay, that produces volatile fatty acids and proteins, okay? And they actually can extract some of the sugars directly from that as well to use for themselves. But believe it or not, most of what a ruminant eats or digests after that, it's the fatty acids and the proteins from the plant. Now, to give people an idea what's going on in here, and this is where these animals are very unique. When you get a microscope down there and you have a look, there is like millions and millions, like billions of these tiny little different types of microbial life. Little tiny, tiny, tiny bugs working away. You got proteolytic-based bacteria, amylolytic-based bacteria, and cellulitic-based bacteria are the three dominant ones in there, as well as some internal azotobacters and other little tiny, tiny critters. You can only see these under a microscope. But I'll give you a first-hand understanding of how lively this life is. Going back to the abattoir where we're disposing of the remains of the inside of the animal, when I scoop out the contents of the rumen, you know, a nice healthy grass or predominantly grass-fed cow with maybe a little bit of grain, when you put your hand in there to scoop that out, you'll get this very interesting tingling sensation. It's almost like it's vibrant, it's lively. You know, you feel like someone's like just putting a gentle electrical field over you.
Like they talk about people that are putting their hands in the soil and getting this. This is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
life.
Now that's what makes a ruminant. The first ruminants evolved under the whole mammal kingdom 30-ish million years ago. The same time the first grass plants came. Not a coincidence, is it? You know, so we get grass, and grass is really, people underappreciate how amazing grass is, okay? They should look at grass, and there's hundreds, thousands of species of grass plants, and they are the skin of the earth, okay? They keep the earth healthy, right? If the trees are like the hair of the earth, okay, like if you look at your forearm, then the skin will be the grass. So it's not a matter of you need trees or grass, you need both, just in the right context. And we'll talk more about that later on. So now, going back to what we're doing, when ruminants there's herding ruminants, these are your bison, wildebeest. You think of that like the scenes from The Lion King, those huge herds moving along. Okay?
Or Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, Dances with Wolves, a huge bison herds. The herding ruminants have to stay together. Okay, this is just the law of nature. Because when you stray too far from the group, okay, you're going to be food. Wolves, tigers, lions, hyenas. This planet is filled with natural population control. They're called predators. Okay, and that's the role of the predators. The predators keep ruminants from destroying the ecosystem. So these animals pack in tight. They move into different types of grassland areas. They fill their bellies, and then
they urinate
and poop. Like any natural creature, you don't want to live in your waste, and you're going to get hungry. So you got to keep moving. Eat, poop, move. Eat, poop, move. And slip some breeding in there. And, you know, slip a little bit of, you know, like when you get close to like all the herding ruminants, all the males will, when they're in a natural environment, will fight. So you slip a little bit of that in there too. You know, a little testosterone. Who's the toughest guy? Toughest guy gets all the chicks. Right? That's nature's law. It's not ours.
That's not a soy boy thing.
So,
no.
So when you stand back and if you play just looking down at a giant scenery here of savanna, Canadian prairie, Russian steppe plains, okay, and what you get is if you were to look at it, you would see this huge herd over time shifting and moving and shifting and moving, being controlled by predators, being cleaned up by hundreds, thousands of birds that come along. And then you get like secondary animals that benefit from these as well. Like in Africa, you're going to have the warthogs come along and they're going to pound through like the elephant dung looking for bugs and critters and stuff like that. All right, so there's a whole functioning ecosystem. So we take that, and that's what we do on our farm. Our cattle, the breeding herd was about 16 head last summer. Okay, and in the fields that they're working in, we packed them into about a fourth or a fifth of an acre, and they would do either a full day or a half a day. Yeah, and then depending on the rate of the grass growth and how much was
and what precipitation we were expecting
Yeah, what
as well.
precipitation.
Okay.
And then they moved. We've got a system for moving them. It's probably beyond the scope of what we can talk about here. Like if any farmers want to contact us, we can talk about it.
But the funniest part is a lot of farmers, again, laugh at us because everybody's got this, "Cool boss, cool boss, cool boss." That's how they call their cows. And we just walk up to the fence and we lift up the line and we say, "Come cows, come cows, come cows." And they just come right through.
They know what it's going to happen because we've been doing it for years. We don't teach calves anymore. Okay, the moms teach the calves what's happening. So now, I mean, now here's the funny part. There's two things that play the role of the predator here. Okay, our electric fence forces the cattle to stay together, and then we're the ones that control their movement that way. So even though they don't see our cows and our sheep don't see us as aggressors, but they know that it's time to move. Now, the thing with our animals, you go to any normal farm, they have that one day in the spring where they first turn out the cattle or sheep on the pasture, and they go nuts. You know, it's like, woo!
They're doing binkies out in the field.
Spring break, right?
Sailors coming into port after 6 months of sea, and then the bar's open, right? They're going to go wild.
True.
We get excitement every day because the cows are like, ooh, fresh breakfast, fresh dinner every day. Carl, I sent you a couple of pictures, I think.
Yeah.
You saw one where, when I'm talking grass, I'm not talking the stuff that grows on your lawn. I'm talking where the cows disappear.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, we're talking like real grass.
I was going to say, actually, Rick, so the stuff that we have on our lawn, just to segue for a quick second, it's not natural grass, right? I mean, this is not what grows around here.
Actually, I'll talk about that.
Okay, is it somewhat natural then? Maybe not.
That grow on your lawn. There's 4 species they use for lawn grass. It's creeping red fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, and annual ryegrass. Sometimes some orchard grass gets slipped in there.
Okay.
And all they did is they selectively bred for grasses to grow shorter and thicker.
Okay.
If people want to see something interesting, if you want to get your own hayfield going, sorry, that's my son's messing with the camera.
Okay.
Let your lawn grasses grow, like tick off your neighbors, and just let your lawn grasses grow right to seed. And take a look, and you're going to say, okay, so that's what a shorter pasture would look like.
Then when you cut it and let it dry, that's hay.
Okay,
hay
so that is similar to the grass then.
Hay is literally just grass that's been cut and dried in the sun.
Now, what you'll see out on our pastures, you'll see all that stuff that's growing on the lawn. You also see like reed canary grass, which is 6-7 feet tall. Timothy, that's the stuff everyone wants to feed their horses and rabbits. We got lots of orchard grass. Orchard grass is a really popular Ontario grass. There's meadow fescue. There's a whole bunch of others. I'm still trying to identify some of them because I thought I had them identified, and it turns out I didn't. Oh, tall fescue, which down in the States can be a problem grass. Then growing with grass, now grasses don't grow by themselves, even with the multiple species. You're going to have the clovers, the alfalfa, the trefoil, all the legumes.
Okay.
And then we got other awesome plants like dandelion. On our farm, dandelion's not a weed. All right, it's a forage plant. It's a high mineral forage plant. In the spring, when you're getting that boost up of dandelions, the cattle, the sheep, all the animals go nuts. Even the chickens, when we had them, they love dandelion. Yeah. It's mineral rich, and then when it goes dormant, we always find that when the dandelions go dormant, the grass grows richer behind it. So it's got
minerals. Maybe does it release the minerals? You think back into it, maybe
minerals. Like some of it's passed to the cows. The other thing too is that dandelion's got a taproot on it, right? And a taproot is, if you just imagine, it's a big, thick, strong root, punches right through, and it'll help break up compaction.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we got other things too. We'll get some goldenrod, which our cows don't touch, but the sheep love it. Sheep will fatten up on goldenrod, amaranth, and pigweed. Then we got burdock. Okay, for those who don't know, burdock's the one with the little sticky balls that they get caught up on your hair. So if you're an Italian guy like yourself, you probably care for your forearms. In all seriousness, though, burdock is another deep taproot plant. A lot of farmers curse it, but we find the ruminant animals, before it goes to a seed, they will eat it. They'll just strip every leaf right off it. They love it. But once it goes to seed, the plant takes on a different flavor, and that's probably a survival mechanism so it can finish reproducing. Remember, the role of a plant in nature is to make more of itself. And that's what every plant aims to do every year, is to make more babies, seeds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I think some people need to remember, I think as well, that like they don't want to be eaten either. I mean, most plants probably don't want to be eaten. I think maybe fruit would be the exception, maybe, but even that's probably debatable. But yeah, so first of all, I love how you guys are doing it there, which is amazing, and it's very interesting to me. And I think I'm going to be visiting you guys very soon. Well, like I said, we were supposed to go there last week, and then the weather got really rough.
Well, that's the weather up here. I mean,
yeah.
we're up on the escarpment, so the weather changes like that.
Absolutely. So was it, when you were first starting out, I want to ask, was it kind of, I mean, first of all, it must have been terrifying. I mean, you don't get into farming, right? Like, so did you just start very small, a couple cows, or how did that work?
Our first year was
a nightmare.
Yeah, pretty much. So we started, as I said, with the book by Joel Salatin and watching a lot of his videos.
We got to step back. The first thing we did before we jumped into this with cows is I volunteered a huge chunk of my time at Gerald and Sherry Lynn Taveld's Twin Creeks or Beyond Organic Farm.
That's the Beyond Organic one.
Okay. I gave them like a lot of my time because I wanted my exposure to farming prior to this was my Uncle Jim's dairy farm and my Aunt Pat's pigs. Okay. Neither of which was what I wanted to do. But Gerald and Sherry Lynn were kind of more along the line because they practice a lot of what we do.
And, yeah, it was actually interesting because before Rick went and spent any time with them, when we were talking about farming, he said, no cows, cows. I am not going to do cows.
I was not going to touch cows.
Dead set against cows, no cows. And then he went and started working with them with the sheep and everything. And next thing you know, he's like, well, there's this kind of cow and there's this kind of cow. And let's take a look at this kind of cow. And
yeah.
Wow.
So we ended up, when we decided we were going to get into it, we started looking at different breeds of cows and went to look at a few local farms and ended up going all the way out to
near Peterborough.
Yeah, to
John and Royanne, the late Royanne McGriskin's Dreamock Acres to buy some purebred registered Dexters.
They were beautiful.
This was a lot of research because when we came down to the end of the wire, we're like, okay, it's either going to be Highlands or it's going to be Dexters.
Well, we were also looking at shorthorns.
Yeah, and we were looking at beef shorthorns. But we ended up going with the Dexters. Part of what influenced our decision is the first property we were going to rent. Because we own our farm now. When we started, we were renting property. It was just a 10-acre old farm with it's like a little hamlet being built out
around
by Nottawa, and it was the only place we could find because it was a hay field. They couldn't get any hay off it anymore. The farmer renting the land told the owner, said, I can't do anything with this anymore. You need to do something else.
Yeah, you need to either put a couple $1,000s into reseeding so that we can take hay
and fertilizer,
or do something else because we can't do anything with it. So
the cash croppers wouldn't touch it. So we got involved with him. We won't get into the name and shame stuff, but
for whatever reason, on the Friday night of the May long weekend, they sent us a text saying you need to remove your animals from our property.
Oh, jeez.
So we spent the May long weekend running around everywhere we could think of, trying to find more land to rent, and there was nobody home, right? Because if you had land to rent, it meant you weren't running it with your own animals.
The other problem is too, we're competing against everything we don't want to see in farming. Cash croppers, the guys that are haying fields. A lot of farm property gets bought by non-farmers, and then they need to rent it out for somebody who's going to do something with their land so they can get their municipal tax breaks. Otherwise, you're paying a lot of money.
Yeah, if you've got an active farm, you're paying municipal taxes on the house plus 5 acres. If you have an active farm but you aren't actually making farm income on your property.
Like minimum $7,000 for Ontario.
Yeah, so if you're not actually doing anything that's considered an agricultural product, then you are being taxed on the entire size of your property.
It gets pretty
Wow.
a lot of money.
So, you know, in some cases, that's, you know, $6,000 to $8,000 extra for some people.
Yeah.
Wow.
In some cases, it's even more. So they try to find someone to come and just take hay from it, or someone to throw their cattle on for a little bit or whatever. And because
usually it's cash crop. They come in, pound, destroy the land, slam down some GMO corn, canola, soy.
But because we didn't yet have our own farm business number, we couldn't offer that discount to anyone whose property we wanted to rent. So we could offer to rent the land, but then they still had their $6,000 or $8,000 they needed to.
We did find a workaround for that, and that is that we would hire in a person who had an established farm number to hay the land for us. So and it worked for 2 summers where we divided, because we did find another, that first farm that we left, which was 10 acres, we found another farm.
114 acres.
114 acres, but we were only there for the summer. It was a former, I don't want to waste too much time on that because that's just going to get carried away.
But it was part of our nightmare year, and we just ended up having to leave about 2 months after we got there because the other person we were sharing with was spending far too much time.
We were subleasing with a person who was leasing.
And he was dealing far too much with the bylaw enforcement officers,
the
OPP, OMAFRA, the environmental groups, because he was. I mean, we go out and there'd be a dead cow in the middle of the field. Not ours. And, you know, it had been there for a while. He had one that died in the creek and he left it there for a while. And it was a nightmare. So number 2 nightmare on the back of number 1 nightmare. So the next place we went to, we were there pretty much till we bought our farm.
Yeah,
it was much better.
It was a 20-acre farm. And that's where what we would do is we would divide the land up. We got a hay guy in.
They had their horses as well, the people we were renting from.
So that we would get half it taken in hay. We only had like 6 cows at the time, so it wasn't a big deal. And then we would graze the rest of it. Then as we got towards the end of that, Lisa's mother kind of partnered up with us, and we put our money together to buy the current farm we have. And this is what we own, and thank God, because each rented farm was driving us nuts.
Was somebody else's rules.
And like the weather, the terms would change. It's not like residential Tennessee where you have protection. You don't have protection with agriculture Tennessee. There's no act, there's no law. And even if you get it written down, it's just whatever the owners feel like.
Yeah. Wow. And on top of that, one of the reasons my mom decided to partner with us is because she realized this flight of fancy wasn't going away.
After 3 years,
we were going to keep doing this, and it was driving her crazy to have to try and work around. We get up in the morning, we drive to the farm, we do our farm chores, we come back to town, we get the boys ready for school, I go to work, he goes to work, we come home at night, we go back to the farm, we do the farm chores, we come home. And then on the weekends, we spent most of the time at the farms doing projects that we couldn't do during the week because we were both still working and things like that. So it was getting frustrating for family because they never saw us anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We decided, since her plans for retirement were kind of kept changing, because originally she was going to get a place on the water up near us because, you know, it's beautiful up here. And then she thought, no, I'd rather be up the mountain. So she was going to get a place up the mountain. And then she kind of said, well, let's look at farms for you guys. So she's helped us out with that. And she has retired, but she still hasn't moved up here. And boys are asking her all the time, Nina, when are you coming up here? Nina, when are you coming up here? So hopefully she'll watch this and she'll get an idea that she's wanted up here too.
I'm sure.
That takes to April 2016.
Okay.
The fall prior to us moving here, most of this land had been torn up into a GMO canola cash crop. Our worst case scenario. Now, I want to take a side note here. I'm not out to attack these farmers, okay?
They're doing what they know.
Yeah, they're doing what they know, what they believe in, and what they get paid for. No farmer wakes up in the morning and go, I can't wait to wreck things. Nobody does that. So anybody down the city thinking that, these guys are out there going, I can't wait to be destructive, they should give their heads a shake.
Yeah.
They're doing what they were taught and what they believe in.
Yeah.
So, and the other part of the farm was a horse pasture for a token 2.5 horses that the lady who owns property had. So it was overgrazed, overused. Just a side note, we might talk about it later if we have time. One animal can overgraze a 100-acre field. We can talk about that.
Wow.
So
I had no idea.
when we got on here, because there have been lots of Liberty. Liberty is a very similar product to Roundup. It's made by Bayer. Okay, Bayer owns the whole thing now. So we pretty much had a dead pasture. So what we did,
it was bare dirt and canola stalks for three of our biggest.
The weeds.
Well, the weeds didn't come in until later on. It was originally bare dirt and canola stalks.
So we needed to kickstart things, and the cows need to have food. So we decided we're going to have to suck it up and feed them hay pretty much for an entire year. So what we did, we kept the rotations up, but we would put down a big round bale, an 800-pound round bale of hay. They would eat it in one spot, and they make a big mess. The more of it they could waste, the better. Now, hay, you're going to get all the parts of the plants that you have, and depending on when it's cut, you're going to get a lot of seed. So that's the big bonus. The cows are going to take their hooves, they're going to work in that seed, they're going to poop all over that hay.
And in some cases, they're pooping out the seeds.
Yeah.
So this kickstarts the grassland ecosystem.
So we were bale grazing on the pasture that didn't exist yet for the entire first year, moving them every day to a new pasture and hay feed. Yeah. And we did end up with a Queen Anne's lace crop that year.
Yeah.
We had a great crop of weeds. It was,
But when we look at that's a good sign, because weeds are the early succession plants, and what they do, nature abhors. Is that the word? Abhors?
Yeah, abhors bare ground.
Bare ground. So if weeds are kicking in, weeds are like nature's cover crop. They're going to put something on the ground that's going to pull the carbon out of the atmosphere, get it into the soil, and it's going to keep the carbon and H2O from evaporating out of the ground into the atmosphere.
It's going to break up the compacted soil as well. So because it had been cropped and tractors and everything driving on top of it.
Very compacted.
So the water was just running off of it. The weeds, again, they help bring the water down into the roots, and as the roots die off, they've broken up the soil. They've made it loose. The water can stay rather than just hitting the soil and running off.
The other way that you get compaction too, besides the tractor compaction, bare soil is a bad thing, because one of the most impressive forces on the earth is rain. Raindrops coming down on bare ground will hammer it and have just pound it like concrete. So that's the other source of compaction you're getting. So we got weeds breaking up the compaction, bringing in like a start of an ecosystem. We're bringing in grass hay with a little bit of legumes in it, lots of seed. The cows are pooping on it, peeing on it,
trampling it.
And all that bacteria in both the poop and just what's in the ground as it's starting to build up here is now starting to kickstart, if you will, like a grassland ecosystem. The other thing too, in our farm, we've been very big about this one. One of our secret weapons is what we call ODH, old dirty hay. Nothing else. If you don't have animals and you want to create a grassland, you can't. You just put hay on the ground. The hay protects the soil. Usually has seed. Hay is reduced to 15% moisture, so it's going to soak up some of that rain and stuff that comes down, as well as shield the soil.
And it holds the carbon as
well.
And
because when it's on the ground, it's going to start to rot. And rotting is just composting. It's just things being turned to dirt. Okay, that's the beauty of it. You get like azotobacter, which is a very common thing that attacks dead grass plants on the ground, and it produces a lot of nitrogen. That's just one of like many types of bacteria and microbial life that's out there.
Mycorrhizal fungi gets in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, we'll come back to mycorrhizal fungi later because this is
Like that.
He gets very excited about plants.
So
I get excited about fungi too.
as much as possibly could. The horse field got a rotation with the cattle, rested for 3 months. Now, it was dealing with a different problem. It was just overgrazed. And one of the best things when you got an overgrazed field, it's still got lots of grass plants, but they're just kind of been, it's like you've been boxing too many rounds, okay? You need to take about a couple months off there, get healed up, and then you're good to go again. And so that's what happened with this field. 3 months later, we put the sheep back out there, but now it's had all this rest, so the grass like, oh, we can finally grow again. We could put up our seed and everything, and we can tiller. What tilling is when you, this is just the grass plants will do this. When you snip them, but don't kill them, they defend themselves. So if they had 10 leaves before, and the cow or the sheep or deer takes a bite, they're like, we got to get better. We got to put up more solar panels to build more energy. So now they'll put up 20 leaves, and they'll grow bushier instead of taller. Okay, when they're growing tall and putting up that long stem, that's what they call the reproductive phase. It's making a baby, and after that, okay, it goes into a vegetative state, and that's just it stays green and bushy. It collects sunlight, carbon, and it's just storing up energy. Okay, getting ready for either winter or like some grass plants, like orchard grass, they have a second production phase in the fall as well as the spring. So anyways, we're starting now to see late 2016, we're starting to see the overgrazed fields are coming in. The pastures, where we first started with the bales, we're now starting to see clover, some other things popping up. There were some oats in the hay, so you're starting to see oats grow.
Wow.
And the oats, by the way, like oats, wheat, all that stuff, they're all grasses. They're just annual grasses. And they do have a place in regenerative farming because they're aggressive. So you got to save soil. You get some of those cereal grains out there, and it's like putting a Band-Aid on right away. So anyways, we come into our first winter, and me just being a stubborn guy, and I do stuff like this. We, at this time, and have for the last couple of years, for our own quality of life, we keep our animals in a winter pen, okay? There are people that can, and you can run your animals through pastures and forests in the wintertime. It's a lot of work, and you got to have a lot of logistics to have the hay out in place, okay?
And the water.
But for just to give ourselves quality of life more than anything, we just pen them up for the winter, and then we do what's called a deep bedding method. That means we give them lots and lots of hay. If necessary, we give them straw. What this does, it keeps a nice clean layer in their pens all the time. When you look at our cows in November, February, April, when they're in those winter pens, they don't have like these big balls of manure dried up on their fur. They stay clean. And we will sacrifice extra hay. We'll use straw, wood chips, anything it takes to keep them clean. Now, this has another benefit. These are all carbon sources that are now combining with their manure and urine and all the stuff they're shedding off their bodies. So you got a compost heap ready to go. And then now this is kind of more of my craziness here. So during the wintertime.
So we're doing all this without owning a tractor.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we're talking moving an 800 round bale, we're doing it by hand. We are out there pushing, and we've got videos and pictures of the boys on the first farm in 2016. So Donato was not even 6 years old yet, and they're out there in their little coveralls helping us roll these hay bales.
Wow.
And, one farm, we had to roll them up a bank barn hill to get them up the ramp of the bank barn to get them up into the barn. So when he says we're crazy, we also had to, in all these paddocks that were moving the cows all summer long, we didn't have a watering system. The watering system was we fill up jugs, we walk the jugs out to them, and we pour the jugs into their.
Yeah.
So we were crazy. We were.
That's why Lisa and I. That's why Lisa and I have very strong hands and shoulders
and upper arms.
Yeah.
So, anyways, to take us further in our story, and I do this every winter. Okay. I'll go on slower days, when the cows are resting on the winter time, I'll go in and randomly start scooping out manure and dirty hay.
Frozen cow pies.
Yep, make a big pile of it outside the pen. I'll get a toboggan, although I got this nice, beautiful, big plastic tube I use now. Fill her up, and I drag her out somewhere out in the pasture, and I just start scattering it about. Like, okay, nature, you'll do your. It's extra nutrients for the soil. Anyways, 2016 coming to 2017. That spring of 2017 takes off.
And that was devastating.
Well, we'll skip that.
Well, we can just mention that there was an issue.
Yeah. But something happened. We lost a cow that year, and it was unfortunately due to a supplemental nutritional program because we add minerals into the cow's diet. It's just something you have to do until you get your land up to a really good, healthy status. And what had happened is we didn't realize the product was changed by one of the companies. And we ended up with a severe iodine deficiency. This cost us the life of one of our cows, and it cost us 2 calves that year. Right? And that's a different story. I'm just glad we worked with the vets. They helped us pinpoint what the problem was.
Yeah.
So 2017, the grass comes up, and you would have thought it wasn't the same farm. It was amazing. That's just one season.
Yeah.
Wow.
Instead of bare dirt and canola stalks in May, there was already green grass.
Yeah, there's green grass.
It was amazing. Like
we.
Yeah, so that gave you motivation to keep it up, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Every year has been an improvement. So every year it's more exciting every spring.
As we get better and better at this, and we start actually adding in technology, because I'm getting older here.
Yeah, we got a small tractor now.
We got a small tractor. We got a watering system that to me is it's like a third child almost. It's just I hook up the tank and the water fills up, and it's on a float valve. So
we can still move it to every paddock, and it's
the only time I have to get involved is if a calf crawls in and poops in it. That's it. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
Although it was fun this year watching some of the older girls get trained to the new watering system because it had a little blue float valve.
Yeah.
So now when they drink the water down, all of a sudden, first of all, they're kind of eyeballing this thing, like, can I get to the water? And then when they take it down and all of a sudden there's this little noise and the thing starts bobbing because the valve is open, they jump back and they're watching like, should we be near this thing? And
wow.
Again, we got some video of the calves learning how the float valve works too. It was a lot of fun.
Well, the calves were easier to train to because they didn't know the old watering system. So to them, it was just like, okay, this is where water is. Whereas the old moms are like, what the heck? So, and moving forward, each season, we're getting better at our grazing. Our pastures are getting better. Okay, sorry, I got my son's being a clown here.
Okay.
And now we've kept adding, taking it to the next level. So we'll talk about dumb things, okay?
Please.
One of the things, you might remember this, you're about our age there, Carlo.
Yep.
He's a youngin'.
When the government thought it'd be a good idea to tell people just plant a gazillion trees. Trees will solve all our environmental problems. Well, they did that on this farm. They had about 10 acres, just monocrop planted in the same pine tree in rows, 2 feet apart.
We have a nice big dead forest now.
Yeah, we got standing firewood. I'm just praying to God that no lightning hits it because we are going to be in big trouble. But not really. I'm busy with a saw right now. I'm making what's called a silvopasture. All right. Silvopasture is, this is what the best way to describe it, be like a savanna. It's a combination of trees and grasslands. Mark Shepard of New Forest Farms down in Wyola, Wisconsin says that the savanna, the classical African savanna, has the highest biomass of plant and mammal life on the planet. It actually exceeds the Amazon. Okay, because you got to count in the worms, the bugs, everything that flows with it. It's very highly productive.
It's a lot of grass compared to the Amazon.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Carlo, I got to do a little bit of a dork moment here.
Yeah.
For our readers or viewers, pardon me, shall I just explain what it is plants do with carbon?
Yes, please do. Please.
You hear the buzzword about there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. And all plants, not just trees, but all plants will do this. Through a process called stemata, they pull carbon out of the atmosphere, all right? That's their food, along with sunlight. And they'll take water, H2O, hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen, from the ground and the roots. And some plants, I think, from what I understand, can do some foliar feeding of water.
Yep.
Inside the plant, to just sum it up, what happens is the plant makes a carbon, hydrogen, oxygen chain. Carbohydrate, okay?
Yep.
Carbon, hydrogen, hydrate, okay? And the 8 is the oxygen. That's what a carbohydrate is. It takes the carbon, combines it with hydrogen, oxygen. The excess oxygen fires it out, and that anything with a set of lungs benefits.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the role that plants play in our atmosphere. So I want to crush a myth right now that trees are just the best for this. Well, grass plants in our context, Grey County, Ontario, grass plants are starting to peak up and go green. And when they go green, they're going through this photosynthesis process in about early to mid-April. Okay, they're not fully productive, but they start. And once they start, that means they're cleaning carbon out of the air. Trees don't even start putting up leaves here until the end of May. Well, by that point, grass have been doing it it's going on almost a month and a half, 2 months. So, people got to give their heads a shake. Now to take it further,
Leaves drop.
Leaves drop around here, but what, October?
Oh no, we're losing them by September, October.
September, October, the leaves are gone. You got to keep in mind, it's only green leaves that are doing this process, right?
Yeah, the red leaves don't do this.
Yeah, the grass still green. I can go out there right now because we've only got about 6 inches of snow. Now, if it's
I don't know if you guys have as much as we do.
the snow
Maybe
buries the grass, it's not doing anything, or if the grass is going to dormancy, it won't do anything. But
we've got grass sticking up this high through our snow right now.
Wow.
Sorry, you can't see what that high is, but that's about 3 feet off the
3 feet of
ground.
snow. Yeah.
Well, up until basically the snow buries the grass, especially vegetative grass, if it's green, it's still doing this process. So people got to get this idea out of their heads that trees are magical and they're the only thing that can save the earth. We say intact ecosystems save the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have trees in the context, grass in context, swamps, marshes.
And then the wildlife to help sustain those. Because if you have a dead forest, you don't have much wildlife living in that forest either. So your habitat is gone anyways.
Yeah.
What's the point of having a bunch of trees that aren't really helping the environment by pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, and they're not really providing an ecosystem for any animals to live?
To give you some more understanding, this it's nighttime, so you can't see this, but this forest right outside our house, where one of these good idea environmental plannings, it's dead inside. I'll walk when you come to our farm. I'll take you for a walk in there.
Yeah, don't lean on any of the trees.
Some of them will fall over. But
they're this big around, but they'll fall over if you lean on them.
You go in there in the summertime, you won't find a raccoon, you won't find a squirrel, a chipmunk. The deer won't hang out there. The only animal you're going to find in there is our dogs when they go running through there.
Trying to chase a fox, because there's a fox den in there.
And the ground in this floor, it's dead. It's just bare needles everywhere, which is just that is not composting. If that's what you see year after year, that's not nature moves in a cyclic matter, right? Birth, life, death, decay, and
birth, life, death, decay.
And on we go. To put it beautifully, I like to say for people who really don't understand this very well, lion cubs and vegans, okay, watch The Lion King. Mufasa explains the circle of life beautifully.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
So to move forward from there, we're talking about Silvopastures. So we're going to have part of our property in Silvopastures. I've already seen early success with this. I called out in some smaller spots, the weakest trees, the deadest trees. And I've had the sheep moving through some of these spots.
We got grass now.
Yeah, it's grass, and the trees we left behind are now coming back to life. It's like they've got space. They're, there's life in the soil again. Oh, we've got to talk about our apple tree. We got tons of apple trees, but we got one in particular, and I've got a picture of it. This thing was dead when we got here. There was like, we thought, oh, we got to take this thing down. It was covered in blight, like a fungus. Okay. There was like maybe 3 apples and like 20 leaves on it the first year. And I looked at this thing and I was cringing. And the branches had reached right down there, touching the ground. So that's how you get the fungal infections up the tree. Okay. So the first thing we did, so I could just get the electric fence underneath this, I trimmed off some of the lower branches. And then the last 2 years, we let the cattle graze around it. And then
they rubbed up against it, and they've trimmed off some of the lower branches. They scratched their horns on the tree.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing harvest this year.
Yeah, the blight's gone.
Yeah.
The productivity of this apple tree is amazing. And it's just like, wow, like, life brings life. Roger Savory, son of Alan Savory, talks about that. Life brings more life. Mm-hmm. And you talk about the biodiversity. People vilify the cow or the sheep. They don't understand what livestock animals do for nature.
It's the management that's the problem.
Yeah, it's the management. When you force them to behave in a way that mimics nature, you'll get positive results.
I wouldn't even say force them. When you encourage them.
Encourage them, yeah.
Yeah, when you allow them to behave in a way that mimics nature.
You don't have to force them, because after a while, they want to do it. Yeah, they want to do it. They love it.
But to go back to the whole tree thing, there's 2 pictures that come to mind, and I'm pretty sure both of them are sources from Alan Savory. And one of them was this great big project to plant all of these trees in the desert. I don't remember which desert it was. They had all these pine trees or cone-bearing trees of some kind. And this was going to be this great project to help reestablish.
Lots of money spent on it.
And so, within 5 years, these trees are almost completely covered in sand dunes.
They're dead.
They're gone. There's because it was plant the trees, we'll save the earth. Yeah. And then you've got this other picture, and I'm almost positive, again, this was Alan's, and it's called the Paradigm Fence. And it's in Africa, I believe, or this one might have been in New Mexico. I can't quite remember where this one was.
One of the places Alan Savory.
I'm pretty sure this one was Africa, but it was basically on one side of the fence. You've got grasses that are about that tall enough that they're holding over.
Cool.
And on the other side of the fence is desert.
Yeah.
And the one side of the fence has been grazed and managed in the similar fashion to what we do since the 70s.
Yeah.
And you have this healthy ecosystem. You can see it looks like a carpet of grass. You can see some trees so it's a silvopasture. You can see life. And on the other side is a conservation area where they have basically said, we're going to call the bison, or not the bison.
There's the Navajo sheep, actually.
So it was the one in New Mexico.
I'll double check with the guys I know from.
But basically it was, these animals are causing the destruction of this area, so let's get rid of them. And on the other side, they're using the animals properly. And because you can't tell me at that point that it's a climate issue, because it's not like that fence is the microclimate barrier.
Exactly.
It's not like you get more rain on one side of the fence than the other.
As Alan Savory says, it's a management issue. It's people doing what's called reductionist thinking. Okay, true. Reductionist thinking, and this is important. Okay, people have to understand this. It's coming to a conclusion too quickly. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, an example is, my nose is horribly itchy. Oh, my nose won't stop itching. So I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to cut my nose off. That's reductionist thinking. That's a very simple example, but when it comes to how we manage things in nature, farmlands, parklands, people do reductionist thinking. They look for what seems like a good idea and an obvious solution without understanding that an ecosystem is complex. There's layers. There's a whole web of things that all interact together. And you're going to change it one way or another when you take out or interfere in some way. And you have to understand what your intended and unintended consequences are going to be.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I talk about it often as well, as that my opinion from what I've learned as well, and you guys can probably echo this, that this is actually fixing, like you said, restoring the land. And the way we've done it as far as monocropping is actually what destroyed the land, right? It's not, so we're getting close to nature.
Really what created the Dust Bowls.
Exactly, part of the problem in the first place. So we're actually trying to get back to nature, so we're almost to mimic when humans didn't touch it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the work that you guys are doing.
On that note, like, we're not saying, cropping is bad and vegetables are bad or anything like that.
Sure.
Like,
there's a way to do it.
If you look at Mark Shepard, who kind of was spearheading the regenerative agriculture concept, and what he has done is
he's the Mark Shepard is the big lead guy in agroforestry. Gabe Brown is sort of one of the Gabe Brown, Ray Archuleta, Dr. Alan Williams. Okay, they're the people that lead in the sort of the cropping side, and there's a whole way to crop so that we don't destroy the land.
But that wasn't what I was going for.
Okay, I know, but when you're talking regenerative side, they're both regenerative.
Yeah. Yeah. So with your produce, your vegetables, things like that, again, you can grow a lot in a regenerative way. So rather than plowing up a whole field and planting all your seeds of one type of fruit or vegetable or whatever, you mix them. So you've got a row of this, a row of that, a row of this, a row of that, and you do it in a pattern so that the sun hits the right ones at the right time, and you're harvesting. So you can still have a lot of different vegetables, but if you have any kind of blight or disease or anything that might wipe out an entire crop, the rest of your fruits or vegetables are going to be fine, because these types of diseases and things usually only affect one type of plant. So if you grow your corn and you grow something slightly shorter beside that, and something slightly shorter beside that, and you have your trees, again, you've got your fruit trees, your nut trees, your bushes, everything kind of in these tiered successions. So you've got light hitting. Like if you look at a picture of New Forest Farm from the air, it looks kind of like one of those garden mazes, the way a lot of the trees are done. And he's done that in like a key line design to keep the water flowing properly. And then he's adjusted where his vegetables go based on those as well. And then he's, in the past couple of years or more maybe now, started working with animals and bringing cattle in through some of these concepts as well.
With Mark Shepard's thing, he doesn't do as much cattle, sheep, or pigs, whatever he's working on that year, but he still uses them. Like the orchard is, and it's a mixed orchard, is his primary income on that farm. But they keep the grass maintained, and they still give the cattle or sheep or whatever, while they're there, a chance to put on muscle and fat before they get sold off the market.
He also has a lot of concepts about making different markets out of the different things you can grow on one farm, instead of putting all your eggs in one basket.
Now, if we got a few minutes here, let's go talk about the other sort of side of
the cover cropping.
Yeah, the cover cropping. Looking at what Gabe Brown's doing. All right, he's kind of the big leader on this one, but he's got a couple. He's got these other, some of these other big names that he works with. It's amazing. So with Gabe Brown, and he's in Bismarck, North Dakota, they have more days below freezing than we do here in this part of Ontario. Okay, like they're in the northern U.S. prairies. It's almost Manitoba, so it's cold. Wow. So his growing season's short like ours, so people can't say this isn't going to work. He's got perennial fields, because he's managing like thousands of acres. He's got perennial fields, which are just like hay fields, pasture fields. Those are simply get the cattle or sheep or whatever he's got going on at the time rotating through. Now for his cropland, it's very interesting rotation. First, he never tills, okay? Never tilling, plowing. He doesn't dig up the soil. There is no creature in earth that goes out and digs up 50, 100, 500 acres of soil. Yeah. The only creature that comes even close to that is the members of the pig family. But where on this earth are you going to have like 5,000 pigs digging up 1,000 acres of field? Yeah. It doesn't happen in nature. at most they do like a little tiny spot where they're going to be hanging out and living. And I'm talking like wild pigs, because domestic pigs will behave the same way. So don't till, don't plow up is kind of the big thing there, because it doesn't happen in nature. And you've got special equipment for no-till drilling. So the first thing that'll be in a rotation, it'll be a mixed cover crop cocktail. And this is amazing to look at. It'll be like, like wheat, oats grown together with like peas, beans, sunflowers, like a whole hodgepodge of these different annual plants. They got to be annuals for this to work. And each plant has a different purpose in terms of what it brings for nutrients to that soil. He'll grow it in, say, like this 100-acre field for this particular field. Before it gets to a seed head, if I understand him correctly, he'll move his cattle in there or his sheep, and they'll go through and they'll graze it all off. So instead of spraying Roundup, he uses a natural herbicide, something that will naturally kill the plant. Okay, and then and sometimes he'll let these annuals grow right up through in the winter and terminate them with the animals at that time, because they're not going to regrow if it's the middle of February. He comes in the spring. Okay, you've got mulch from the mixed cover crop. You've got manure from the animals grazing through. So your fertilizer is there. You don't need to use a herbicide because it's been terminated naturally. And then he plants in his cash crop.
But he does it without digging up the soil. The drill just puts the seed directly in.
Yeah.
So they're destroying the land.
And so he's leaving the soil protected.
Wow.
And he's keeping the moisture down. That's another interesting thing too that they've pointed out is the temperature of bare soil versus the temperature at soil level with grass.
Yeah.
The temperature is very different in just like very small areas because the grass is protecting the soil.
Yeah.
Well, the funniest thing is the late Neil Dennis, Saskatchewan, he was doing what we're doing with cattle, but he has 10,000 acres and he was doing like 1,500 head of cattle. And fortunately, Neil died last year. Neil made some interesting observations with when you keep the grasslands properly managed on the soil, okay? Like Lisa was just saying, the temperatures at where the grass is, right, soil level is cooler in the summertime, and it's warmer in the wintertime, because grass will also trap in heat.
Perfect insulator.
Your plants can grow a little longer and your animals can graze a little longer.
Yeah, so wasn't he the one that said basically he can start grazing earlier because his grasses start growing sooner because the snow melts off faster,
and he's grazing
and he can graze it longer because the snow doesn't start accumulating because the heat of his ground keeps melting it.
Wow.
Yeah, going back to the whole thing, like the big thing we harp on here, create an ecosystem. And the ecosystem's got plants, it's got animals, it's got microbes, worms,
it's got tall
bacteria,
plants,
fungus,
short plants,
everything, biodiversity. And what is Trudeau's favorite thing? Diversity is our strength. Well, in nature, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, this is not a political show, thank goodness. But no, absolutely. Like, I absolutely love what you guys are doing, and it's very clear to me that A, you love the earth, right? And B, even before that, you love your animals. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about as well, if we can, just for a minute. The misconception, maybe, or the blanket statement, oftentimes, that a lot of people that are not eating meat for ethical reasons. A lot of times, I hear the argument of, why do you have to slaughter an animal? Why do you have to kill an animal? Why do you have to, cause this suffering? It's not necessary. And I oftentimes bring up the idea of, well, it's going to happen in nature. It's going to be way worse in nature in most cases, right, than a controlled slaughter. So you guys love your animals. It's very clear to me. Your children love your animals. You love, so how do you make sense of it? And then maybe how can you present it in a way that, that makes sense as well to my listeners and viewers, because we have to, it's natural to me. So I want to hear your take.
So we had an issue with this when Donato was about 5 years old, and him and his friends were starting to come to terms with this concept that we take these animals that we name every single animal on this farm except the chickens, because 9 times out of 10 we can only recognize one chicken out of 40.
Chickens are chickens anyway. Kidding.
Yeah, I mean, every single animal that's born on this farm or comes to this farm gets a name. And part of what Nato was having trouble with, was his friends were saying, how come you're mean to your animals? And he says, what do you mean? They said, well, you kill your animals. And so we had to explain to him that our goal for our farm is that our animals have the best life possible. And they have just that one bad day. And that kind of made him feel a little bit better. When it is time for an animal to move along, it's completely heart-wrenching for us. I mean, when we load up our animals, I bawl. I'm bawling the whole time the truck is pulling away.
Really?
So we go through this every year. If we lose like some of our rabbits, we've lost just for random reasons. Rabbits are not particularly hardy, and we cry. We've had just one time our dog Disney, when she was still fairly young, she accidentally caught a chicken, and we sat there and I held that chicken for as long as I could, and it passed, and that was it. And again, we cried. And part of the reason we name every single animal is because we are invested in their life. We are concerned with their happiness, with their joy, with the way they live their life. And just giving them a number, even if you give something a number, you still start to grow attached to it. Everybody's like, well, doesn't it make it harder when you name them? Absolutely. We are not coming from a place where it's a frivolous life. It's just something to be tossed aside. There is value in everything about our animals, and we see personality traits in our animals. People are always like, well, it's just a cow. Well, it's not just a cow. Like, have you ever seen a cow that perks up when they hear your voice? Have you ever seen a cow that does a little dance when they think they're about to get rubbed under the chin? It's a whole different thing. It's not that we are claiming the life because we think it's worth less than ours. We feel very strongly that humans need meat. We need meat to develop. We didn't develop these brains and our use of tools and things like that from eating a purely vegetable diet. It developed from eating fatty meats. And we don't think that you have to assume that because we can do this and we have to do this, that we don't have to give a crap about what it is that we're eating. So yes, we feel very strongly that meat is required, but how that meat gets to your plate has a really big importance to us as well.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that. So
Please.
A lot of people may or may not know, I help out on a contract basis part-time at the abattoir where we process the animals. And I actually do some of the kills on my own animals. So Lisa talks about how we honor their lives. We say a prayer to say thank you for your sacrifice. And I'm the one that, like most of my sheep, I put them down myself. But working at the abattoir, and this is a small abattoir with some very highly skilled family, the Mills family, they're very good at what they do. All right. I know the deaths are quick, clean, and we make sure it's as stress-free as possible. The other sort of way of looking at it, I go back to the ecosystem and nature's rules. Life and death come together. Any herding animals, we need the meat for, I believe we need the meat. You just don't get it from plant proteins. It's delusional. When we pick our animals out, we're following nature's principles, because we pick the less performing bulls, we pick the less performing rams. Now, you hear these animal sanctuaries and stuff like that. Well, if we were to do that here, all our property would be destroyed, because do you know what happens if you, one year we had all bulls born. And if we let them all grow up together, we'd have no fencing left, because Like, I'm not kidding you, when bulls get to, when they hit testosterone and start getting to close to breeding age.
Yeah, so at about 12 to 14 months.
They start getting downright nasty with each other. They'll even come close to killing each other or kill each other. Rams, this hasn't happened in our young rams. They're just starting to get reproductive when it's when they're off to be processed. They're not cute anymore, by the way. They look big and bulky and they want to fight everything out there. Except the old ram. The old ram's bigger, heavier. And he's like, he's like the bouncer out there. He's like, it's my house, my rules. You challenge me, I'd flatten you. But I'll give an example. My friend John, he had these rams, and we went to see them when we were visiting his farm. This one ram had this sail.
Like a Klingon ridge.
Yeah, had a Klingon ridge down the center of his head. Well, what kind of breed of sheep is that? He goes, oh, that guy was fighting with another ram.
And he actually cracked his skull.
And the other one died. Right? That's what these animals do.
That's nature.
Now, for people who are really, really adamant about it, okay, the cows get their licks in too. I've been rammed in the horns. I've been trampled. Lisa gets bruised up.
Oh, I've got plenty of bruises.
Yeah, we take our licks.
But at the same token, we've also watched female cows gang up and try to kill another female cow.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes.
But if there's a hierarchy battle, because in herding animals, the bull is the bull, but he's actually not the one in charge of the herd.
Yeah,
it's actually the matriarch that runs the herd, and when somebody wants to challenge her, then that's when things can get pretty nasty. And I mean, with our bulls, as Rick said, they're descendants of the Spanish fighting bull, basically. And so when you look at our bulls, they've got the horns that go out sideways, and they're thick at the base, and they kind of come to a point, but they go out almost perfectly sideways. Our girls, most of their horns go out a little bit, and then they go up, and they either curve in or they point back out. So they're much longer, and they can spear each other with those. Mm-hmm. We've come out after a challenge, and you can see someone will have like a mark through their hair. It hasn't broken the skin, but it's enough that it's kind of burned the hair off because it went through so fast.
Wow.
And they'll if there are too many of them for the food supply in that area, then they will force each other out. They will drive each other out. That's what nature does. And so if you want to start taking land that if you want to stop using these animals for meat, but you also want to take all of their land and turn it into crops to feed a vegetarian planet, then you have nowhere for these animals to live. They're going to start turning on each other, and you're going to end up with
you're going to have to kill them anyways.
Yeah, you're going to end up with very small pockets that might survive, but you're probably going to end up with most of them being extinct.
Well, exactly. By the sounds of it, too, to have a fully sustainable earth, you actually need these animals roaming the earth. Yeah. So if you need them anyway, and they're going to die anyway, and they're the best source of nutrition, what are we supposed to do with them? Eat them. Right?
Well, it's the same with just about
with respect and everything. Yeah.
It's the same with just about any system. Like, we did an experiment in grade 9 science, I think it was. You had these colored beads, and you put them in a cup, and you had to pull them out. And so one color represented rabbits, and the other color was foxes. So in the beginning, you had to have enough rabbits to feed the fox, and then every time your fox survived, you put 2 more foxes in and a couple less rabbits. And so you watch as the rabbit population explodes, slowly the fox population starts growing. But then when the fox population gets too big for the rabbits start going down, and then the fox population starts going down. So it happens in nature. You have these cycles.
The spikes, yeah.
And if we eliminate humans from taking out these animals, and we eliminate the animals that are taking out these animals because there's nowhere for the wolves and everything else to live as well, you aren't going to have these animals. Yeah. The predators are not going to be able to survive because the pockets of where these animals are living are going to be so spread out that the wolves can't basically make a meal from one pocket to the next. And then these animals aren't going to be able to really breed and thrive because their food source is being taken away as well. So it doesn't make sense from the perspective of you want to save the animals to then completely annihilate any place for these animals to live.
Exactly. Like, save the planet, save the animals for what? It's almost like saying save the planet or save the humans. What are we going to save us for? What's going to be left over, right?
Yeah.
So the last thing I do want to ask you guys, and thank you so much for your time today. I know it's been a little bit of a longer conversation, but I really appreciate you giving so much great, inspiration and advice. One thing I do want to ask you guys about, it would be, how could the average Joe like me, how could we start out? My thought would be, maybe I should get some chickens. Am I way off, or is that something, to start out as far as how do I do this myself?
Well, it depends. Do you want a homestead or do you want a farm to produce food for others?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know what I want.
Are you just, another thing to look at too is even just the average consumer.
Exactly.
Thinking about changing your way of approaching your food system. So for us, the movie Food Inc. kind of triggered it. It was like, okay, we're just buying everything from the grocery store. We don't know where it's coming from. We don't know how it was grown. We don't know anything about that. So for us, that started to lead to farmers markets. And now, of course, with all the big exposés, you have to make sure you actually know the farmer and they're not getting their food from the food terminals and things like that. And that's how
so
we
you buy locally grown
tomatoes that still has
in Mexico stickers.
Yeah.
Then you have to really start asking questions.
But you can start to look at the different farmers and you can start to ask questions, but put ideas in their heads too. Say, well, what do you do to help the environment with your farm? And then maybe that'll change the way who you choose to buy your produce from at these markets and things like that. And so as you're putting those ideas in other farmers' minds and they're seeing that your dollars are being governed and guided by your belief in helping the environment, then they might start to help and figure out how they can do that as well. So it's not just necessarily that everybody needs to start their own vegetable garden and start, saving their rainwater and things like that. A lot of it comes down to starting with your dollar. And
exactly. Supporting the people who are doing it, right? That makes sense.
I think it was Joel Salatin who basically said, stop trying to get governments to try and change things to promote this, and instead get people making the change, and then the governments will follow suit.
Yep, exactly.
Because the more people that are doing it and just making it happen, the government has to play catch up. Rather than trying to force them, which then has to force everybody else.
Don't look for salvation through legislation.
Yeah.
Because the problem is the governments are always disconnected. And when they start making rules down to something like that, it's going to go off the rails.
Unintended consequences.
There's no fault of the government. Just they're trying to please too many people.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's one thing. Have I got a few seconds just to dispel one last myth there, Carlo?
Absolutely. Please, Rick.
All right, one of the ones that's come up, one of the ones that's come up lately, and it drives me nuts, is you have Facebook, you see pictures of not the Amazon, and people saying the Amazon being burned so we can grow soy to feed all the cows in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Whether you're like us and you don't feed any soy, or you're the main feedlots here in Ontario, or somewhere in between,
there's no
Canadian farmer I know that's going to buy soy from 5,000 kilometers away to bring it up here when we grow plenty of our own, like pulses, cereals, and everything else. So that's ridiculous. If there is soy being grown where the Amazon should be, and the Amazon should stay intact, it's got to be Brazilian farmers, because no farmer's going to pay that kind of money to have stuff shipped that far out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually. That's a good point. But thank you so much, guys. So, how do we see your farmers? I mean, you have an online space, or how do you? I mean, you have.
We do have a website.
Okay.
We do have a website, so it's Doubledpastures.ca. So Double D Pastures, all one word, .ca. The website is still under construction because we have had some technology issues, and we're kind of, as we mentioned, the internet on the farm is not particularly great.
Okay.
So between having all of our pictures stored on phones that then get stepped on by cows,
Yeah.
or having hard drives crash and things like that. So we have so many pictures and things that we wanted to share on our website.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of taking time to figure out how it's best to present that. And then we do have some videos up on our YouTube channel as well.
Yep. If you go on the YouTube of Double D Pastures, there's only 3 up there so far, but I'm going to be putting in some more short ones.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then we've got I think there's another one of us doing a presentation at the Collingwood.
That's on Double D Pastures.
Okay, so that's on there. It's a presentation that Rick did for the local agricultural society as well. And then if you Google Double D Pastures, if you put it in Google Maps, it pretty much takes you right to our front door.
Perfect.
And then we basically ask that if anybody is coming, that you contact us ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not because we have anything to hide, but because of the way our rotation system works and everything like that. We don't necessarily want somebody flying up the driveway when there's calves being born right beside it.
If we're moving the sheep across the driveway.
If we've got an electric fence up across the driveway because the animals are going from one side to the other, again, it's
send
not
an
a
email
great
first.
thing to have.
Yeah. Email or call.
Yeah,
right?
email, phone, text,
Absolutely.
something so that we can say yes or no.
Exactly. And I'll put all the links as well in the show notes after the show. I'll put like the link to your website, and I'll put those photos. Actually, Rick, you sent me a couple
We'll
really good
send some
photos.
pictures and some videos and stuff to you as well,
Awesome.
so that you can get some good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Rick and Lisa, thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure, and I'll be down there up there very soon to visit and pick up some meat. I think you still have some for me there, Rick.
Yeah, we got some for you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys, and we'll chat very soon.
All right. Have a great